Welcome. Today we will read Lesson 73 from the workbook. And from the text we will read Chapter 7, Section 9, the extension of the kingdom. And now for Lesson 73. I will there be light. Today we are considering the will you share with God. This is not the same as the ego's idle wishes, out of which darkness and nothingness arise. The will you share with God has all the power of creation in it. The ego's idle wishes are unshared and therefore have no power at all. Its wishes are not idle in the sense that they can make a world of illusions in which your belief can be very strong. But they are idle indeed in terms of creation. They make nothing that is real. Idle wishes and grievances are partners or co-makers in picturing the world you see. The wishes of the ego gave rise to it, and the ego's need for grievances, which are necessary to maintain it, peoples it with figures that seem to attack you and call for righteous judgment. These figures become the middlemen the ego employs to traffic in grievances. They stand between your awareness and your brother's reality. Beholding them, you do not know your brothers or yourself. Your will is lost to you in this strange bartering, in which guilt is traded back and forth, and grievances increase with each exchange. Can such a world have been created by the will the Son of God shares with his Father? Did God create disaster for his Son? Creation is the will of both together. Would God create a world that kills himself? Today we will try once more to reach the world that is in accordance with your will. The light is in it because it does not oppose the will of God. It is not heaven, but the light of heaven shines on it. Darkness has vanished. The ego's idle wishes have been withdrawn. Yet the light that shines upon this world reflects your will, and so it must be in you that we will look for it. Your picture of the world can only mirror what is within. The source of neither light nor darkness can be found without. Grievances darken your mind, and you look out on a darkened world. Forgiveness lifts the darkness, reasserts your will, and lets you look upon a world of light. We have repeatedly emphasized that the barrier of grievances is easily passed and cannot stand between you and your salvation. The reason is very simple. Do you really want to be in hell? Do you really want to weep and suffer and die? Forget the ego's arguments, which seek to prove all this is really heaven. You know it is not so. You cannot want this for yourself. There is a point beyond which illusions cannot go. Suffering is not happiness, and it is happiness you really want. Such is your will in truth, and so salvation is your will as well. You want to succeed in what we are trying to do today. We undertake it with your blessing and your glad accord. We will succeed today if you remember that you want salvation for yourself. You want to accept God's plan because you share in it. You have no will that can really oppose it, and you do not want to do so. Salvation is for you. Above all else, you want the freedom to remember who you really are. Today, it is the ego that stands powerless before your will. Your will is free, and nothing can prevail against it. Therefore, we undertake the exercises for today in happy confidence, certain that we will find what it is your will to find, and remember what it is your will to remember. No idle wishes can detain us, nor deceive us with an illusion of strength. Today, let your will be done, and end forever the insane belief that it is hell in place of heaven that you choose. We will begin our longer practice periods with the recognition that God's plan for salvation, and only His, is wholly in accord with your will. It is not the purpose of an alien power thrust upon you unwillingly. It is the one purpose here on which you and your Father are in perfect accord. You will succeed today, the time appointed for the release of the Son of God from hell and from all idle wishes. His will is now restored to his awareness. He is willing this very day to look upon the light in him and be saved. After reminding yourself of this and determining to keep your will clearly in mind, tell yourself with gentle firmness and quiet certainty, I will there be light. Let me behold the light that reflects God's will and mine. Then let your will assert itself, joined with the power of God and united with yourself. Put the rest of the practice period under their guidance. Join with them as they lead the way. In the shorter practice periods, again, make a declaration of what you really want. Say, I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. This should be repeated several times an hour. It is most important, however, to apply today's idea in this form immediately you are attempted to hold a grievance of any kind. This will help you let your grievances go instead of cherishing them and hiding them in darkness. We see in today's lesson that whenever the ego's will or its idle wishes encounter obstacles, grievances to those getting in the way are formed. And holding on to these grievances, one no longer knows others or knows oneself. Forgiveness lifts the ego's fearful darkness, restoring one's true will, which lets one look upon a world of light. The light of being which shines upon this world reflects one's true will. The goal of today's exercises is to help one let go of one's grievances instead of protecting and valuing the guilt and darkness that they contain. And now for our text reading for today from chapter 7, section 9, the extension of the kingdom. Only you can limit your creative power, but God wills to release it. He no more wills you to deprive yourself of your creations than he wills to deprive himself of his. Do not withhold your gifts to the sonship, or you withhold yourself from God. Selfishness is of the ego, but self-fullness is of spirit, because that is how God created it. The Holy Spirit is in the part of the mind that lies between the ego and the spirit, mediating between them always in favor of the spirit. To the ego, this is partiality, and it responds as if it were being sided against. To spirit, this is truth, because it knows its fullness and cannot conceive of any part from which it is excluded. Spirit knows that the awareness of all its brothers is included in its own, as it is included in God. The power of the whole sonship and of its Creator is therefore Spirit's own fullness, rendering its creations equally whole and equal in perfection. The ego cannot prevail against a totality that includes God, and any totality must include God. Everything he created is given all his power, because it is part of him and shares his being with him. Creating is the opposite of loss, as blessing is the opposite of sacrifice. Being must be extended. That is how it retains the knowledge of itself. Spirit yearns to share its being as its Creator did. Created by sharing, its will is to create. It does not wish to contain God, but wills to extend his being. The extension of God's being is Spirit's only function. Its fullness cannot be contained, any more than can the fullness of its Creator. Fullness is extension. The ego's whole thought system blocks extension, and thus blocks your only function. It therefore blocks your joy, so that you perceive yourself as unfulfilled. Unless you create, you are unfulfilled. But God does not know unfulfillment, and therefore you must create. You may not know your own creations, but this can no more interfere with their reality than your unawareness of your spirit can interfere with its being. The kingdom is forever extending because it is in the mind of God. You do not know your joy because you do not know your own self-fullness. Exclude any part of the kingdom from yourself, and you are not whole. A split mind cannot perceive its fullness, and needs the miracle of its wholeness to dawn upon it and heal it. This reawakens the wholeness in it, and restores it to the kingdom because of its acceptance of wholeness. The full appreciation of the mind's self-fullness makes selfishness impossible and extension inevitable. That is why there is perfect peace in the kingdom. Spirit is fulfilling its function, and only complete fulfillment is peace. Your creations are protected for you because the Holy Spirit, who is in your mind, knows of them and can bring them into your awareness whenever you will let him. They are there as part of your own being because your fulfillment includes them. The creations of every Son of God are yours, since every creation belongs to everyone, being created for the sonship as a whole. You have not failed to increase the inheritance of the sons of God, and thus have not failed to secure it for yourself, since it was the will of God to give it to you. He gave it forever. Since it was his will that you have it forever, he gave you the means for keeping it. And you have done so. Disobeying God's will is meaningful only to the insane. In truth, it is impossible. Your self-fullness is as boundless as God's. Like his, it extends forever and in perfect peace. Its radiance is so intense that it creates in perfect joy, and only the whole can be born of its wholeness. Be confident that you have never lost your identity and the extensions which maintain it in wholeness and peace. Miracles are an expression of this confidence. They are reflections of both your proper identification with your brothers and of your awareness that your identification is maintained by extension. The miracle is a lesson in total perception. By including any part of totality in the lesson, you have included the whole. One's being, who one is, knows itself by extending itself as love. Revealing one's unlimited, boundless, and infinite nature. Without extending, being could not be aware that it is love itself. Creating is the extension of love. When awareness of one's being becomes hidden due to identification with ego beliefs, one in reality continues to create. One is just not aware of one's creations. One cannot but extend oneself, being love, as this is the very nature of love. Reawakening the mind to its fullness restores the kingdom to the awareness of being. By fully appreciating the mind's self-fullness, selfishness becomes impossible, and extension becomes inevitable.